I'm Angie, and this is See Her Outside, brought to you by the Karen Project and the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We share stories of women, girls, and gender-diverse adventurers to promote belonging and visibility in nature. We hope that this story inspires you to advocate for a more inclusive outdoors. A few months ago, we had an episode here on See Her Outside with yours truly, explaining why the world needs to hear your story and debunking the mindsets that hold us back from sharing our perspectives. I think I called it a rant meets pep talk, and this might be another one of those. If you're new to the See Her Outside podcast, hello, I'm Angie, and I'm part of the team at the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, or the GIA Alliance. One of our initiatives is called the Karen Project. Volunteers of the Karen Project, we call them Trailblazers, turn an outdoor adventure into a grassroots fundraiser for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. A big piece of that program is the way our Trailblazers use storytelling throughout their adventure fundraisers. Storytelling can be used like a buzzword these days, but for us at the GIA Alliance, sharing stories is crucial to what we do. Our programs from the outside might look like they're all about the outdoor adventure. And yeah, we are about adventure. But what we're doing at a deeper level is shifting the narrative, the stories of who belongs outdoors. Every time a Trailblazer joins the Karen Project to host an adventure fundraiser, they gift the world a story about why time outdoors is so transformative to us as individuals and as a society. Every time somebody applies to a Summit Scholarship, they put words to their dreams in a way that expresses how meaningful community in the outdoors is, yet how many barriers still exist. And every time somebody is a guest here on this podcast, they add a colorful thread to our growing tapestry of outdoor culture, one that looks a lot better in rainbow colors than in shades of gray, hearing the same old story time after time. We know that storytelling is key to closing the gender gap. And if you're not sure about that, then go back and listen to that prior episode I mentioned. And lately I've been noticing a trend among humans in general, but also among women in the outdoors. Somebody has a story and they want to share it, but they self-censor. And I get it. With trolls and haters all over the internet, it is scary to put an opinion out there on display for the world to see and to react to. We get a hot take, but maybe it's too hot. We draft an Instagram caption, then we decide not to post it after all. We want to pitch an idea to an adventure brand, but we think, well, I'm not an elite athlete, so why would they care? Many times we have a story in our heads, but we stay silent. What is the cost of that silence? That's exactly what I want to rant/pep talk about right now. Countering self-censorship and challenging ourselves to use our voices for positive change. I am going to share 5 blocks that I've seen sneaky self-censorship come up lately. And I want to give some examples of the positive impact that comes from breaking that silence. I'll also offer you a mini experiment with each block if you want to practice what I like to call using your outside voice. So let's go. Self-censorship block number 1. I don't have a good ending yet. You know those LinkedIn posts that are like, I got engaged this weekend. Here's what that taught me about B2B sales. Nobody likes those. Most of us as humans can relate more to a messy middle than we can to everything being neatly wrapped in a bow. In fact, if I were to tell you a story right now in which I start as a victim and then I meet a guide and then I go on a quest and I have a climactic event and then I overcome it and I become a hero happily ever after, you probably aren't going to relate to that story very much. And a lot of us learned about that hero's journey storytelling format in high school. Well, this is your permission to not use that format in your own storytelling. Heroes can be unrelatable. Happily ever after endings aren't as relatable as messiness and surprises and changes of plan. When it comes down to it, your story is a conversation rather than a conclusion. Your story is a conversation starter. It's not like optimized content for LinkedIn. A good example right now is our Trailblazer, Nikki McCants. She is in the middle of hiking or running all trails within the South Mountain Park Preserve in her home in Phoenix. And in her adventure story that she shares on her blog and on her fundraising page, she shares about an unexpected illness that she got a few years ago. And she hasn't felt as strong or as energetic since then. She's using her trail challenge to discover a new version of herself who she doesn't fully know yet. Nikki is framing her story around healing her body and her relationship with her body, even though she doesn't know what that's going to look like a few months from now. Here's what I've noticed with a few of our Trailblazers lately. People who shift conversations and culture, they aren't protecting their ego. They're really just testing their own perspectives. In other words, their blog posts and their fundraising pages have half-formed thoughts and musings. They offer us a start to a conversation where the lessons are only going to take shape after they're discussed. These Trailblazers are offering conversation starters in their stories without being fully certain of how their story will end. And the magic of that is that the more that you write, the more that you speak about your messy stories, your messy thoughts, the more clear you are going to become in your messaging over time. But you need to test those ideas before they feel fully complete. You do not need a happy ending in order to start sharing your story. So, one experiment to try. Start a list of your half-baked perspectives. I have a doodle notebook, and on one page at the top, I wrote things I believe. There are little scribbles all over the page about perspectives that I believe in, but I don't yet have a full conclusion or proof behind. But that process of writing them down and bringing them up with others in casual conversation, that will allow my perspectives to fully take shape. And it might for you too. Self-censorship block number 2, I'm afraid I will change my mind later. Okay, spoiler alert, your mind is going to change. Someday you are going to look back on this era of your life and find something to cringe about. We all do. Just this morning, I saw a photo of 7th grade me after putting way too much sun in my hair. I cringe. On a more serious note, when I look back to when I started building a platform for my business, there are a bunch of practices that I implemented, a bunch of words that I used that feel so counter to how I operate now. But the only way that we evolve is by expressing our ideas and reiterating on them and changing our minds. I have seen others and myself make endless edits on a draft or censor bits and pieces of it on and on and on until that original idea has lost a lot of what it made it stand out. One topic that comes to mind for me right now is the often debated whether or not to geotag locations of outdoor destinations on social media. There's a lot of nuance in that topic, and I have seen creators with large audiences change their mind over time and publicly share so, in both directions too. And I think that's awesome because it provides a space for more nuanced conversation with different perspectives instead of an echo chamber where everything is black and white. There's also changing your mind about adventure goals. And this is super relatable and still hard to talk about it. Our Trailblazer, Hallie, recently shifted her adventure fundraiser goal after experiencing a mountaineering accident. Her original goal was to climb every 14,000-foot mountain in California within a year, and that's super cool. But after her accident, she's decided to shift to a 5-day trek, which includes 9 of those 14er peaks, which is also super cool. But what I'm more impressed with, this shift, with this shortened adventure, is the vulnerability that she shared on the reasons of why she made that change. Reading her words after she shifted her adventure made me tear up because I could see or I could feel how she has changed over time. When it comes down to it, shifting voices are better. They're more impactful than stagnant voices. An experiment for you to try with this one. This is another journaly or doodly reflection idea. Create a conflicting beliefs list. What are beliefs that you hold right now, today, that contradict each other? Maybe you believe that the outdoors should be more inclusive, and sometimes you feel annoyed when trails are crowded. Maybe you want to be a role model and you still struggle with self-doubt. Maybe you think rest is important and you feel guilty when you take a break. I know that one. If you're feeling brave, Write a few sentences explaining one of those contradictory beliefs that you hold, and then share it on a platform. You can always tag us at The Karen Project on Instagram so that we can chime in. Self-censorship block number 3, mind my language first. This is a big one, and for good reason. Most of us anyway, are afraid of cancel culture or alienating somebody or having a loved one disagree with us. We think that if we're direct, we'll be called bossy, or that if we're honest, we'll be called unprofessional. And then we end up watering down our language to be less edgy or more palatable to more people. But when it comes to activism and advocacy and closing the gender gap outdoors and in, like here at the Gia Alliance, the conversations that we need to be having most are too important for cushioning. Your message can lose its power when you sand off the edges too much. In particular, you risk losing your specificity, your resonance with an audience, and at worst, losing the why behind your entire point. Stories that are most memorable, they don't sugarcoat with too many disclaimers and qualifiers and fluff that somehow skirts around taking a stance. Well, you can be bold without being aggressive. I used to host another podcast called For the Love of, Trade-Offs We Make in Pursuit of Our Passions. One of our guests was Marina Legree. She founded Ascend Athletics. They're an adventure nonprofit for women in Afghanistan and Pakistan. This episode, Marina was incredible at bringing up issues using plain, not flowery language. She didn't beat around the bush while showing the nuance behind some really tough topics. Like, she talked about feeling less safe living in D.C. while working in the U.S. Army to living in Afghanistan. She discussed problematic issues in language that a lot of us use, like using expat instead of immigrant, or third world, or calling Afghan people Arabs. She directly spoke to why the world needs more women in government and international leadership. A lot of those statements were bold, and they could be debated by people who disagree with Marina, but everything she shared was a deep conversation sparker for our mostly American listeners, because she didn't water down her story. She told it like it is, how she experienced it, and people really resonated with that. I was actually very pleasantly surprised. There's also something to be said for boldly sharing your adventure goals without playing shy. One of our Trailblazers, Carly Graham, recently published a blog post about the power of being audacious. Carly shared how she publicly announced that she would attempt a fastest known time on Pico de Orizaba in Mexico, and then she failed. She didn't even finish the route. But now, in Carly's reflection, she's so happy that she audaciously set that big goal anyway. She said that despite her adventure not going to plan, quote, "I received continued support, had a successful fundraiser, and the process of planning and going for this dream of mine positively and permanently changed my life. Now, in my day-to-day, failure scares me less. I root a lot of this back to the audacity that I've built chasing uncertain dreams and telling people about them." Thanks, Carly. And also, Trailblazer Colleen McDonald talks a lot about shooting your shot and telling people about your goals aloud in a previous episode of See Her Outside, so scroll back if you are inspired by that. Okay, experiment for you to try with this one. Name the fear. When you have a perspective that you want to share and you feel the urge to soften your language, note that urge publicly. Or tell people that you've rewritten something a dozen times because you're nervous, but share it anyway. That gives other people permission to share their bold thoughts, and that's how we continue these tough conversations. Self-censorship block number 4. I don't think society is ready to talk about this. Well, all the more reason to be the one to start the conversation. One of my friends calls this go first energy. If you know something new worth discussing or doing, then you sometimes need to be the one to go first. Too many people are recycling content and ideas, and not enough people are bravely showing up and sharing new, raw, and honest thinking. New ideas are what's going to push us towards more openness, more inclusion, and equity in society. We want to challenge and push norms in a space instead of playing it safe. I personally have talked a lot publicly about menstrual cycles. When I started that body of work, people were a bit weirded out. It seemed so out there to openly and bluntly speak about something so personal, so taboo, even though it affects half the population. And yeah, some people told me that it was uncomfortable, but far, far more people told me how inspired they were to see me normalize something that society likes to keep quiet, something that they were experiencing themselves and felt shame around. And now, fast forward years later through all that, I have a whole piece of my own platform devoted to menstrual health in the outdoors, and it's making change directly in the outdoor industry. Another example, let's go back to our friend Carly. In a recent episode of See Her Outside, Carly bravely shared her experience with sexual assault while learning rock climbing. I got emotional during our recording and while listening to the final edit, not just because of what happened to Carly and to so many other young women and athletes, but because of how necessary and brave that topic is. Assault in the outdoors happens far more than the media talks about, and the topic makes people very uncomfortable. People who share their own experiences often remain anonymous, and all that makes sense. But Carly's openness to share how assault affected her and her future made me more ready to have conversations about it. It felt like such an important story to air on See Her Outside because it's unfortunately a common experience, even if society isn't very open about it. This go first energy, both in Carly and in the episode itself, will clear the way for others to open up about their own stories or to be more open-minded when listening to others speak about assault. Your vulnerability might be someone else's permission slip. So here's an experiment to try. If go first energy is a bit too edgy for you right now, find someone else who went first and expand the conversation. Find a writer, an athlete, an activist, or a storyteller who has shared a thought similar to what you want to share. Honestly, you might find a ton of great examples listening to interviews here on See Her Outside. Then you can pull a quote from that person and you can write a post or text a friend group chat with your follow-up to the quote. You can flex your boldness muscles using someone else's idea as a starter. Self-censorship block number 5. An expert could share this better than I can. Yes, this is one of the flavors of imposter syndrome, but lucky for you, you do not need to be an expert. You can be an example instead. In fact, I think a lot of the women that I shared about in this episode right now probably wouldn't call themselves an expert in the topic. And yet their stories are the ones that women are talking about. Their fundraisers are directly shaping the future of inclusion and outdoor adventure. Yes, an expert can educate, they can give facts, but an expert does not a storyteller make. You have an opportunity to tell a story that has never been told, not in that way, not in your way. In my previous Rant Pep Talk episode, I gave an example about submitting avalanche condition observations online. My course instructors had shared the importance of women specifically writing those observations, since the far majority of snow reports are currently written by demographically similar men, which means that one lens of thinking becomes most dominant. And we have the power to shake that up to add more lenses. I am not an expert on avalanches, not at all. But what I see and hear and feel out in the field is super valuable data for others to apply to their winter adventures. I'm not an expert on AI or ChatGPT, but recently I shared my personal thoughts about it on Substack, about using it for creative work, and I was surprised, in a good way, to get a bunch of messages from people appreciating my opinion. I am so much less interested in expert facts than I am in relatable stories. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. We want to hear your experience over a lecture by an expert. One experiment you can try around this: put your hike recap on all trails, or add a review for your trail running vest on the website where you bought it, or start an adventure fundraiser with the Cairn Project. Identify one outlet that already exists that gives you an excuse to share your real-life story. And tag us when you do so that we can cheer you on. I could go on and on with examples from our Trailblazers who chose to uncensor themselves and share their honest stories. Mara White is currently biking 5,000 kilometers from France to Turkey, and her adventure fundraiser page beautifully and heartbreakingly shares her experience with self-harm and how the outdoors helped her shift that to self-care. Colleen McDonald, at the time of me recording this, just yesterday, 2 days ago, achieved that fastest known time on Mount Kilimanjaro. Viv Serrano wrote a blog post about training to climb Aconcagua with bipolar disorder. Rachel Boehm came on this podcast and shared her experience with body dysmorphia. Author Christine Reed and I got into menstrual cycles on our Gritlit Book Club author interview. This community is creating a cultural shift towards more belonging, honesty, equity, and representation. And that starts with the narratives that we are putting out into our social circles, into our media. So please take one of those experiments if you wish to, and remind yourself that 1, you do not need a fairy tale ending. 2, it's okay to change your mind. 3, you can speak honestly without sugarcoating. 4, you can lead the conversation that society is hiding from. And 5, be a storyteller, not an expert. If you're excited to dig more into your stories and impact, here are 2 ways that you are invited to share your voice while helping close the gender gap. Number 1, submit a story to Field Notes. Send us a personal essay about a time that nature left an impact on you. You might get to record it to be professionally published right here on See Her Outside. And 2, celebrate Trailtober with us. In October, we are hosting a team fundraiser that you can participate in from wherever you are. You will set a trail or outdoor goal for the 31 days of the month, and you'll get storytelling prompts to share about the process and impact of your adventure and your fundraiser. Find both opportunities in the show notes, and until next time, feel free to email Angie at karenproject.org to let us know how you are uncensoring yourself moving forward. Thank you. If you want to support the mission of the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, I'll give you several options. 1, you can apply to become a Trailblazer through our program, the Karen Project. Trailblazers design an adventure fundraiser that crowdfunds scholarships for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. Go to www.karenproject.org to learn more. 2, you can spread the word about the Summit Scholarship Foundation to help us advance gender equity on and off the mountain. Check it out at www.summitscholarship.org. And 3, you can share the See Her Outside podcast with a friend. Every single share, 5-star review, or comment helps us share stories to get more girls and women outside. See Her Outside is hosted by me, Angie Marie, and edited by Allison Castonguay, with research by Danielle Peacher. Until next time, go get outside.